The year was 1963. NASCAR was still fairly new at just 15 years of age, but it was already then looking to branch internationally. With the help of executives in Japan, it created the Japan NASCAR Corporation, and a plan was set to have stock car racing. In June of that year, the corporation purchased a 1.5 million square meter area of land where a replica of the Daytona International Speedway was supposed to be built, sitting at just slightly under 2.5 miles. F1 driver Sir Sterling Moss was invited to oversee the construction, but told the corporation that it was unrealistic to build such a massive speedway on a rough and mountainous terrain. Eventually, the funds dried up and the track was not completed after only one of the bankings. The Japan NASCAR Corporation not too long after folded, and the Mitsubishi estate took over management in October of 1965 and was completed later that year in December. Now you're probably wondering, what was the track that they were trying to build? None other than Fuji Speedway, which would host 4 F1 races in 1976 and 77, and much later in 2007 and 2008. But that would be the only time NASCAR and the country of Japan would cross paths. Or so we would think. The year was 1994 and NASCAR was on the rise. A beautiful mixture of colorful and unique cars compiled with larger-than-life personalities racing across America was getting the attention of fans across the country. But not only was it getting attention from the red, white, and blue, it was also getting attention on the other side of the world, Japan. Japan had always a vibrant car culture, especially in racing. From Formula 1, Super Formula, and Super GT to being home of some of the most influential drivers and cars the world has ever seen, as well as home to the greatest racing franchise of all time, Gran Turismo, and home to one of my favorite movies, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. You know, when the series was actually good and before it jumped multiple sharks for God knows why. I mean, one of my favorite characters was Han Lu, and I saw that man literally die burnt in flames. Rest in peace to that man. Wait, what? Wait, what do you mean he's alive? How? I saw him burn to death! God, this series has gone off the rails. Anyways, back to NASCAR. It was exploding in popularity, even breaking into unknown territory, competing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the inaugural Brickyard 400. Eventually, the more you grow, other people will start to notice. Suzuka is one of the most historic racetracks in the world. It has held F1 races since 1987 and also hosted motorcycle races, sports car, endurance, and other open-wheel events. It was quickly establishing itself as a track that is welcomed by any racing series, but General Manager Hiromichi Suzuki wanted something that was completely foreign to the Japanese crowd. So he showed up to the Daytona International Speedway to take a look at NASCAR in person, and was amazed from what he had witnessed, and knew he wanted to take that and bring it back to Japan. So he showed up unannounced to NASCAR offices in Daytona and was able to have a meeting with NASCAR CEO Bill France Jr., and in November of 1995, a deal was made to host exhibition races and bring NASCAR to the Suzuka circuit in Japan. In January of 1996, Dale Earnhardt ran some laps in his Goodwrench Chevrolet Suzuka in front of a large crowd to see stock cars hit the sacred track for the first time. Finally, after months of curiosity and excitement, on November 24, 1996, NASCAR took the green flag at Suzuka. The format was broken down into 2 segments, and whoever finished in the top 10 at the end of the first segment was inverted for the second one. Rusty Wallace and Jeff Gordon were the class of the field, but Wallace had the better car, and the team knew that, so in the closing laps of the first stage, Wallace dropped back to the back of the pack in the top 10 in order to come out first for the final segment, while Jeff Gordon would go on to win segment 1. After that, for segment number 2, Rusty Wallace would restart first and led wire to wire, beating Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon to win the inaugural NASCAR race in Japan. When NASCAR returned in 1997, history was made when rain tires were used for the first time during the practice and qualifying sessions. Another change was made in the driver lineup, as Ricky Craven replaced the newly crowned champion Jeff Gordon, who was getting out of surgery to remove a polyp on his vocal cords. Anyways, for the race, it was led by Mark Martin on pole and led the first 45 laps before a combination of drivers like Mike Skinner, Wally Dallenbach, Lance Hooper, and Ricky Craven. The race was also much more chaotic than the first one. Already a crash on lap 1 and took out Kenny Irwin Jr., and champions like Dale Earnhardt and last year's winner Rusty Wallace were forced to retire from the race very early on due to engine problems. But up front, it was Ricky Craven who took the lead on lap 68, but Mike Skinner and Mark Martin were on his tail and both would pass him with 23 laps to go, setting up a showdown between Skinner and Martin. but in the end, it was Skinner who was able to hold off Martin and drive away to win at Suzuka in 1997. However, for 1998, NASCAR would return to Japan, but not to Suzuka, but to the newly built twin-ring Motegi, about 3 hours from the city of Tokyo. Honda built this track for the purpose of developing its oval racing program in the IndyCar series, but it was also built for NASCAR since they love turning left for some reason. Anyways, the track was just over 1.5 miles, and it was built similar to Darlington Raceway in an egg-shaped oval. This race was special because it would also be the first time Dale Jr. would race with his father in a NASCAR Cup event. The race being on an oval saw a lot more lead changes, 22 to be exact between 7 different leaders. Jeremy Mayfield from Penske Racing started on pole, but outside pole sitter Jeff Gordon took the lead, and him and once again Mike Skinner had the best cars leading all but 38 laps, but it was Mike who led the most with 94. After a crash involving Bobby Hamilton and Brendan Gaughan set up a 5-lap shootout between Skinner and Gordon, but in the end, it was Skinner that was just barely able to hold off Gordon to win for the second time in Japan. It was an exciting race that capped off with a great finish, and hopefully no one lost a shoe or two in Japan after that race. Ain't that right, Junior? After the race, a press conference was held. NASCAR President Mike Helton stated that since the 3-year Cup Series contract to run in Japan expired after the '98 race, the NASCAR Cup Series would not return to Japan. However, the Winston West Series would hold an event as a series season-ending race in 1999. Which, by the way, why would you bring a regional series to an international race? Not Mexico or Canada, but to freaking Japan! Anyways, Kevin Richards won the race. However, due to the high cost for the transport to the event and poor attendance, the series did not return after the 1990 race. In fact, that would be the last time the Cup Series would ever race outside the United States, until June of 2025, when it was announced that NASCAR would bring the Cup Series for the first time ever south of the border in Mexico City. Although the 3-year experiment of NASCAR racing in Japan failed, it was cool to see, to look back at history, that NASCAR actually raced in Japanese soil at 2 historic racetracks, especially the Suzuka circuit. But now the talking point on NASCAR nowadays is, could we take the sport outside the US, more specifically outside the Americas? Well, with social media being a thing, NASCAR can be viewed much more easily around the world than in 1998. Japanese driver Kamui Kobayashi, who competed in 2 Cup Series races for 23XI Racing, said that he believes that there is an audience in Japan if NASCAR were to return, and that the reception following his NASCAR debut in Indianapolis last year was well received in Japan. Now, could NASCAR come back to Japan? Maybe. With how crazy NASCAR has been with the schedule as of late, who knows? We may return to the land of the rising sun sooner than we think. But there's a look back at NASCAR racing in Japan. If you were a part of that history-making process of NASCAR racing in Japan, let me know your thoughts on watching the event in the comment section down below. And let me know your thoughts. Do you think that NASCAR can race in Japan? Curious to know what y'all think about that. But until then, my name is Jett from MDK. Thanks for watching.